done a live on Twitter before. So, um, welcome criticism. uh, okay, so we're live now on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm Catherine Vitale, and
I'm Heidi.
this is Heidi. um, so, for anybody tuning in that hasn't been here before, I am I have been a right wing activist, and Heidi has been a left wing activist. And we came together on an issue that we both saw some importance of back in 2021. And we started working together. We found some common ground, some things that we agree on. And so here we are now, starting this show to have the uncomfortable conversations that nobody wants to have about things that we agree on and things that we disagree on. And we're hoping that more people will join in the conversations and we can build effective bridges between the two, between the illusion of the two sides of politics. Oh, hi, Leslie. Leslie, I think, came to us from Mass Accountability or Boston Ray. I don't remember. But I am actually going to be talking about mass accountability today. The topic that we are speaking on is the First Amendment. Do I have an email? I do have an email. I can comment while I'm on here. Hold on. I'll type my email now. Oh, you came from your mother. Oh, you know Tommy. Okay. And Heidi, Tommy is, I'm not sure how much I've told you about him, but he is Mass Accountability. And if you've never seen his YouTube channel, you should. He has like 80,000 followers and growing every day. And he does First Amendment audits. Like North Shore, actually. He's near you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll have to definitely check him out.
Yeah. So, okay, I just sent my email in the comments, I think. Yep, there it is. So today we're going to be talking about the First Amendment and the lack thereof in Massachusetts. So I guess I think that on my side, we have like a number of cases.
So many
going right now, and not lawsuits either, like criminal cases. Because it is a crime now to exercise your First Amendment right in Massachusetts. So yeah, I don't even know where to start. Maybe with I'll go down a list of arrests is what I'll do. So we can start with my first arrest that happened in May, I think, of 2022. We started protesting the Boston Mayor, Michelle Wu, in December of 2021. And then it just grew to, like, we protested a couple times in the end of December. And then in January, it was full on. Like, there were a lot of protests happening. A lot of people in Boston, residents of Boston and people who work in Boston that were and still are unhappy with Michelle Wu's policies. Specifically at the time, it was actually she got into office November of 2021. And thank you, Leslie. November of 2021. And then in December of 2021, she came in right away with the vaccine mandates for all city workers and took away their option to take COVID tests. So I think at that point they might have been doing like weekly or biweekly COVID testing as like you could either continue to test or get the vaccine and then you don't have to test anymore. So she took away that option and made it mandatory for all city workers to get the jab. And so we started protesting because of that. And it was in March of 2022 that Michelle Wu and the city council passed a new city ordinance to limit the hours that you could protest in a residential area targeting a specific residence. And this bill was passed specifically because of us, the people protesting Michelle Wu in front of her house when she closed down City Hall. So from January to March, we were protesting in front of her house a lot. And then when she passed the ordinance, we couldn't protest in front of her house in the morning anymore. So we were going to City Hall. I went to City Hall, me and one other person, in early May, and we had megaphones and whistles, which that's usually what we bring to a protest. And there were just two of us. Michelle Wu was giving a press conference on the mezzanine of City Hall, which when you walk into the entrance, the mezzanine is like up, like one floor upward, like right in the middle of the lobby. So we walked into the front door and started yelling our chant, "Shame on Wu." And we were using the megaphones. So the Boston police that were in the building told us that we needed to leave the building. I at first wasn't trying to leave, but my friend that I was with, she did walk outside of the building and she kept doing the chanting. And then I blew my whistle that it was on like a lanyard around my neck. And the officer grabbed the whistle out of my mouth and pulled it. So he like dragged me by it like a dog and told me I can't blow the whistle in there. And then 3 of the cops proceeded to drag me out of City Hall. Then there's a great picture of it that was in the Boston Herald, I think the next day. And so they dragged me out, but they didn't arrest me then. We continued to protest outside. Again, there were only 2 of us, yelling "Shame on Wu." And maybe like 15 minutes later, I had put my megaphone down on the ground. This was after they had already snatched my megaphone out of my hand when I was inside, and they threw it out the building. They threw it out the front door. So, and I don't know if it's broken because they confiscated that megaphone and I haven't seen it since. So, I had put it off to the side and I tried to go back in the building because as far as I could see, they made me leave the building because I had the megaphone. So I tried to go back in without the megaphone and the cop grabbed my arm and we were standing like next to the revolving door. And I didn't move once he grabbed me. We stood there for a few minutes and I was chanting while he was standing there holding my arm. And then I blew my whistle and that was that. I blew the whistle and they put me under arrest. And I was charged with trespassing, and which I don't understand how because I was outside and nobody told me to leave outside. And trespassing and assault and battery on a police officer. And then that was in May. And then in August, the case was dismissed, which I think is a pretty big deal. Because if you're going to accuse somebody of assault and battery on a police officer, and then it's dismissed, doesn't that mean you lied? Like, that's how I feel. Like, the cops falsified my police report. So why didn't anybody ask questions about that? Why isn't the judge asking questions about that? They just dismissed it, and now that's it. So that was my first arrest for blowing a whistle. And then we had, actually, I think it was before that, there were 2 arrests for 2 activists trying to walk into the Massachusetts State House unvaccinated. So that was the problem, was that they did not show proof of vaccination, and they proceeded to try to walk in the building. and got arrested for it, and with some bullshit charges. And their cases are still going on for that. That was, I want to say, maybe February or March of last year. If Shannon's here, she can probably correct me on dates. But so, I'm sorry, is the background noise really loud?
It's kind of loud.
Hold on. Sorry. So, 2 people got arrested at the State House. Those cases are still going on. Then we had Shannon was arrested at Michelle Wu's, well, not at Michelle Wu's house, but on her street out in front of her house, and charged with violating the civil ordinance that Michelle Wu got passed, which that a couple months later was determined by the judge to be an unlawful arrest. He actually said the words that she was wrongfully arrested because they tried to charge her criminally with a civil offense. The picketing ordinance is a fine structure. So it's supposed to be like the first time you're cited, you get a $50 fine. Sorry, $50 fine. Second time, $150 fine. Third time, and after that, like a $300 fine, I think. Nobody ever got a fine. Not yet. Not at all. It's been a year since this thing passed. Nobody's gotten a fine. 8 people were immediately summoned to clerk magistrate's hearings, and then it was dismissed at those hearings. And then after that, they started arresting people and threatening arrest. So Shannon got arrested. A couple months later, it was deemed a wrongful arrest. Then we went again as a group. There were 4 of us back to Michelle Wu's house. And this time they arrested us and charged us. So we went back because we thought that since, basically they made a mistake the first time they arrested her when there was no way to charge her criminally with a civil offense. So we're like, okay, so, we'll go and they'll fine us, right? They're not going to arrest us. Mm-hmm. They did. They arrested 4 of us and charged us with disturbing the peace this time, which is a criminal offense. So basically they just had a meeting and, some back and forth between the mayor's office and the police department to figure out how are we going to get these people to go away? What can we stick to them criminally that is going to keep them tied up in court? So disturbing the peace, ding, ding, ding. That's what they charged us with. And immediately, almost, the other 2 people, their cases were dismissed. And mine and Shannon's are still going on in court. So I'm pretty confused as to why 4 of us were arrested for the exact same thing and 2 of them were dismissed. There's literally no explanation for that part. Then we have Sean, which was one of the ones that got arrested at the State House. He also has been arrested for protesting in a public park using a megaphone in public. And then which at that arrest, he was like tackled to the ground by like 5 police officers on top of him. And the mayor was right there. All kinds of city hall employees were right there. Nobody paid any mind to the black man tackled to the ground in the middle of the park. Nobody cared. And then that case is still going on. and they stole his megaphone then too. And then Sean also was arrested at City Hall. He was assaulted by somebody that had kind of like started this big argument between 2 different political things between 2 different groups of people. And we were all arguing back and forth. And then when we went out in the hallway to leave, one of these people came up and attacked him from behind, and it was a woman. So when he turned around, not knowing who just hit him from behind, grabbed her wrists and pushed her up against the wall to restrain her. And which is all on camera. So there's no question about what he did, even though some people, people will add their own narrative to it and try to say that it was something that it wasn't. That he ended up arrested that day. The girl that attacked him from behind didn't have any consequences. And that case is also still going on, and he got a bunch of charges on that case. So he has 3 cases. I was also arrested at the Massachusetts Department of Education in August for trying to attend a public meeting. Like I don't think that you could make this shit up. I literally did nothing. They charged me with trespassing and destruction of property because they say that something was broken, and they can't. They actually are not even alleging that it was me who broke it. So that's very confusing. So he has 3 cases. Me and Shannon have our case together, and I have the other case from the Department of Education. And then the other girl that was arrested at the State House, her case is still going on. And then we have Mass Accountability, Tommy, up in Salem. His situation is crazy because he is a First Amendment auditor. So he shows up randomly, like, I don't know, like crime scenes or like, just places where there are first responders, and he audits. He makes sure people are doing their jobs, public employees. And there was an EMT in Salem that filed for a harassment prevention order against him, saying that he was like obstructing her from doing her job, which that's not harassment. I've seen quite a few harassment prevention order hearings happen over like the past month or so, ironically enough, and that doesn't constitute as harassment. So, but that judge didn't like even ask for any evidence or any other instances, because in order to get a harassment prevention order, there's supposed to be 3 incidents of harassment, which like harassment has a definition according to the law. So they have to meet the lawful definition. And all it was that like he was obstructing her from doing her job, and the judge granted it. So it's like a 2-year order. He's supposed to not be in the same vicinity as this EMT. And this is his job. This is his livelihood. Like this is what he does for a living, is these audits. So he can't show up on a scene if there's EMTs there because maybe she'll be there. What? So the judge just granted it, like no questions asked. Didn't have anybody produce any evidence, nothing. And then I'm not sure how long after. Okay, so Leslie corrected me. She said that Tommy calls himself an activist, not an auditor. So Tommy's an activist, not an auditor. Yeah, so he ended up getting arrested at a scene for, I think they said that he had violated the order like prior to the day that he was arrested. So they took his phones. He had a ridiculously high bail. Like, it's just like outrageous things for nothing, like for literally doing nothing. And so he's going through all of that. And I hope that I'm doing the story justice. Please add details in the comments if I'm not getting all of them about Tommy's case, because it's so complex. And he's basically like, it's probably, I assume that it's hurting his income, because I assume he makes money off of his big YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. So that's what he's going through. And yeah. So she says, hold on, because Leslie's saying a bunch of stuff over here. Piling on charges is pro forma to force plea deal, fines so you don't go after government suits. I don't really, I'm not really sure what that means. But Yeah. So that's what's going on. So there's like a good handful of people going through First Amendment cases who are, yeah. And Shannon says they've taken multiple of his phones and uh, cameras from him too.
Wow.
So there's that. Like I said, if I'm missing anything from any of these, please add the details in the comments. Yeah, Shannon says he's being targeted by authorities, retaliation,
I believe it.
which the same things have happened to us publicly, very publicly, because while we were protesting at Michelle Wu's house, we were having the media was writing about us, talking about us on the news, all kinds of things about how racist we were and, whatever. But yeah, so the First Amendment does not exist in Massachusetts. I don't think so. I feel like our group of people is like the right side leaning group of people, and but Heidi on the left side has
Yeah.
also had a couple of First Amendment issues too, right?
Yeah, well, I have one for using a megaphone. It was on DCR property, but I had no knowledge that it was DCR property. It was just like in Swampscott, there's like a boulevard, and I had traveled with a couple of others to counter protest a rally of a woman that there's usually two protests going on and we counter each other. It was that kind of a thing. And so they already had a protest going on, and we arrived on the scene, and then they called the police, and like there was like 11 state troopers, and they also had megaphones, and they were using their megaphones, and I didn't even use my megaphone in front of the police, but the woman on the other side said she has a megaphone, and so they detained us. And right now, that I'm waiting for a court date. It's in the hands of ACLU, so hopefully they wanted to make me pay, like, I think it was a $200 fine, and I'm fighting that, and that's kind of the minor thing. And Janelle is the one that really comes to my mind. So her son was ran over by the police in Randolph, and he survived. But what happened was it was a minor traffic stop, and he had his phone set to record, and he was talking to his wife at the same time, but his phone was recording everything. And he was arguing with the officer because the officer wouldn't let him get his paperwork out of his car. They were towing the car, and they wouldn't let him take his shoes out of the car. He was barefoot. And so he got into this argument with a cop, and he pretended to take a picture of the cop with his phone. And all the while, I mean, that you can hear the audio clips, him talking to his wife saying, I was just pretending to get his picture, this and that. Then a few minutes later, he's walking away from the scene, and you hear a big crash. And then the second audio clip, a bystander that saw the cop run him over took his phone to call his wife, and it started recording again. And you could hear in the background everything that was going on, and he was in shock. And so, long story short, Janelle, his mother, was protesting every day in front of Randolph Police Station, and the bank across the street, Citizens Bank, put a complaint in about her because they said they were having trouble with business because of her protests. And so the cops were waiting for any opportunity to arrest her. And she was sitting on her truck, and her thigh touched her megaphone, and it put the siren mode on for like a second, like not even. And they came after her and started. She tried to put her megaphone in her truck, and then they yanked her out of the truck and jumped on top of her. And somebody at the protest got that on video too. So they tried to charge her with disturbing the peace, resisting arrest. Um, I forget the other one, but they wanted to put her in jail for like actual jail time because they just wanted to shut her up because she wouldn't stop demanding justice for her son. I mean, he had to learn to walk again. Like, he's still not completely healed. And so long story short, she got a lawyer, and they just said if she doesn't use a megaphone for a year, and if she didn't get arrested, those two things, she's not allowed to use a megaphone for a year, and she's not allowed to get in any trouble, then they would take away all the charges. A week away from the year, we were still protesting. We're still protesting justice for her son because there has been no justice yet. And it's the same bank across the street. Some guy came and said some nasty things and gave her the finger, and she followed, she went into the bank where he was to let him know what happened to her son and what they did, to try to explain, why are you doing that? Do you know why I'm here? And then the bank called the police on her again, and now she was being charged with intimidating a witness. The bank, like, they just want to shut her up. Like, it's so unfair. But yeah.
So that's what it is. So they just want to shut people up. Kimberly says, quick question. I've always seen people protest, but I've never seen so many. I think she meant so many people get arrested for it. Because I think the past 2 years has brought on a lot of public engagement with politics and policing and how things have been going since the lockdowns and George Floyd and everything that's happened. So I think we're just more aware of protesting now. I think a lot of us didn't really pay attention to it much before 2020. And I mean, protesting, to somebody on the outside looking in, it might look like, some people are just mad about something. And so they show up with signs, or they show up and they yell, or, in our case, they stand out in the street and yell at the mayor's house. And it's like, if you want to be closed-minded and not pay attention to what's actually going on, sure. That's what a protest could be. But a protest is like, I think, probably the most effective tool that anybody could use to bring public awareness to an issue, for one, to put the politicians or police or whoever the authority or public official is in question, to put them on the hot seat, to shame them, to make them feel uncomfortable. Because if you're not shaming them publicly and making them feel uncomfortable, they're not going to do anything. I mean, even when I'm not saying that I think that, you don't go protest something and then it's fixed the next day.
Right.
That's not how things work, except for the Boston Public Schools mask mandates. That literally was fixed the next day. But that's not how it works. And it's the people who protest. I don't think any of us expect it to work that way. That would be pretty silly if we thought that it was that easy to get changes to be made in government. But when you raise public awareness about something and you put a spotlight on something, depending on the issue, it might be something that they have to pay attention to, because the government is corrupt. Newsflash. The government is corrupt. The police are corrupt. So, and I feel like the past 2 generations have been completely blinded to all of this, not paying attention. We've been programmed and brainwashed into thinking the government has everything handled. Like, let them do their jobs. We don't have to pay attention to what they're doing. And we haven't really, So they've been doing a lot of corrupt things. There's so many things that happen, and so many people are just content with throwing their hands in the air and saying, that's just the way it is. Things will never be the same, So, like, it shouldn't be like that. And I forget who said it. Maybe I'm not even going to say a name because I forget who the quote's from. But freedom is never more than a generation away from being lost. Like, it's something that you have to continuously fight to keep, and it can be lost like that. And that's what we're watching happen here. We literally do not have a First Amendment. We're being censored on the internet, nationally, internationally. We're being censored in person. With the remote meetings and hearings that government has been allowed to have because of public health emergency, they kick people out of public hearings. They mute people. They tell people that they can only speak on certain topics, which is against open meeting law. And all kinds of violations are happening. And the government is just so used to being able to get away with violating. A lot of them may not even know that they're violating because they're just so used to being able to do whatever they want. And now that people are actually standing up and fighting back, they're throwing us in jail. They're giving us these bullshit criminal charges. And, maybe the average person, when they get arrested for something, they just want it to go away. So they make deals, plea deals, pretrial probation deals, which is one that keeps getting offered to me that I'm not taking. Stupid deals that don't make any sense and that just give the courts the upper hand. And it's like, you could risk doing 2 years in jail for something, if you're found guilty, or you could take this deal that we're going to give you and do no time. Don't risk anything. And it's like, probably the majority of people are just going to take the deal because they get scared and intimidated. Nobody wants to do 2 years in jail. Right. So they take the deal. And by ignoring the way that they intimidate us, we're keeping them in power and letting them control us with their intimidation tactics and letting them silence us. We have these open cases for protesting. We can't protest in front of Michelle Wu's house. We now are pretty much known by the police and are at risk of being arrested anytime we're outside holding a sign in Boston. What kind of a world is this? I'm just looking at the comments. David Rold is here. He says, the police in Boston area, all kinds of police have always been intimidating and arresting protesters for the past 20 years. So David is like a veteran protester. He's been an activist for a long time and on all sides of the political spectrum. Yeah. So Kimberly, I hope that answers your question as to why people are getting arrested. And like David said, it's been happening for at least the 20 years that he's been involved in, taking public action. And I think before now, a lot of us just weren't paying attention. And that's another thing is this is how they effectively silence us and get us to go away is the media doesn't talk about it. If they do, they might write a story and then it goes away the next day, or they don't tell all the details, or they only tell, or they lie. They've printed many lies about all of us. And, basically for one, if it's not in the media, it didn't happen. And if they lie, it might be really hard to be able to sway the public opinion from, believing the lies. And, that raises another great point as to why we're doing this show right now, because we have to be our own media. We have to be printing our own paper newsletters. We have to be making our own internet videos, making social media posts, reaching out to people all over the place and telling these stories to raise public awareness, because the mainstream media is not going to do it. We have to do it. And they're going to keep silencing us and keep censoring us. And that's why I always tell everybody to video everything that you do. You have that right. And anytime something happens or something's happening, go live, or after it, make a video about it, make a blog, print a newsletter, pass it out in your community, whatever. It's just really sad. And we've already gone over the time, and I feel like we barely have even made like a dent in the First Amendment issue.
know.
What do you think?
I know, yeah. We didn't even talk about like how Michelle Wu put that mandate through too on the time limit, and like it affected the left too. It affected the left protesters, but nobody wanted to fight against it because because they
Yeah,
didn't want to be seen as siding with the right, you know?
yeah. I think that I think that this could probably be a topic for a whole show. Is this
Yeah,
one ordinance,
right.
the picketing ordinance from Michelle Wu? Because there's so many different layers to like unfold and explain that you know, we can like dip into it a little bit, but I mean maybe even multiple shows. Not even joking, because there's so much corruption. It's ridiculous. And you know, we really like hurt ourselves when we refuse to work with the other side, because um like you said, that ordinance is a blanket ordinance. It can affect anybody at any time that they want it to, you know.
Like,
So I mean, as it stands, you're not allowed to protest in a residential area before 9 a.m. in Boston, which by protesting, another thing that people don't care to read into the details of, they don't, because a lot of people agreed with the protest because you know, they thought that we were rude and aggressive, and you know, that it was not peaceful, that we were outside yelling in front of the mayor's house at 7 a.m. Which, first of all, it's not peaceful that you're making somebody choose between their livelihood and putting chemicals into their body. That's not peaceful. So, like, fuck your peaceful, you know? So people think that yelling is not peaceful. The definition of peaceful protest is nonviolent.
yeah.
Literally, nonviolent, it equals peaceful. As long as there's no violence or crime being committed, I mean,
Protests are meant to have noise. You're
yes,
there to
yes,
be
and
loud. You're there
that
to
was
be
what, like a
heard.
Supreme Court ruling, that protests are meant to be loud and disruptful and annoying,
Yeah.
and you know, they're meant to disrupt the public officials or whoever's being protested. Yes, they're meant to disturb. Um Oh yeah, so also Shannon makes another point about the ordinance, is that they're not threatening, they're not like enforcing this ordinance anywhere but in front of Michelle Wu's house, which is a flaw in their planning, because since the ordinance has been passed, we've protested before 9 a.m. at other people's houses in Boston. Michael Flaherty's house, and the department of Margaret Cook, what is she, the public health commissioner or something? I'm probably wrong, but we've protested at other people's houses in Boston, and cops have come and cops have gone, and nobody talks about the ordinance anywhere but Michelle Wu's house.
Yeah.
So yeah, so okay, another point, that who sent the notice? The Boston Police Department sent a notice to Eggleston Square Police Station telling them in that neighborhood not to arrest people. Um, I think that was like, was that like a homelessness issue? Like saying not to arrest people, not on the picketing ordinance, but um, basically the point of that is that they make their own rules as they go, and like a law is supposed to be made to apply to anybody with no prejudice or discrimination. So yeah, so she says there was one notice to for Wu's ordinance to treat it as a criminal violation, and then to treat what other ordinances or what as civil violations. So to stand down and not arrest anybody. And you can't, that's not how law is supposed to work.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. Kimberly Ann says it makes sense because she can up and fire them. So yeah, I mean, the police work basically at the direction of the mayor. So their jobs are literally in her hands. But like I said, there's a lot to unfold with the First Amendment issues, and that's basically the reason for this show. So I'm sure we're going to have many shows about the First Amendment and probably specifically about the picketing ordinance because it's so fucked up. So I don't know. It's 9:40. We did say that we were going to circle back on that other issue, but I don't know if you have to get off now or if you want to have that other conversation, or we could save it till Monday.
I'm up for
It's
whatever.
up to
Whatever
you.
you feel like you're doing, I don't care.
So on the last episode on Wednesday, oh, thank you, Kimberly. She said, I love this show. It's only our third episode. Thank you. So on the last episode, we were talking about the all gender bathrooms. And before we even started the show, Heidi came up with the solution to just make single stalls for everybody so that nobody has to be uncomfortable. But we also were talking about transgenderism. Like, is that even a word? Am I making that up? Transgenderism?
I don't know if that's a word.
So I said that I think that it's a mental disorder. And I got the look from Heidi. And so first of all, on the transgender note, I think that what is it called? It has a name, doesn't it? It's called like gender.
Oh, gender dysphoria.
Dysphoria.
Gender dysphoria disorder.
Yeah.
So it is a mental disorder. First of all, but we were talking about the sports issue.
Yes.
About like, do we think that somebody had asked the question in the comments while we were talking about it? And I said that I didn't think it was fair for transgender people to be in professional sports because specifically I was talking about like a biological male playing in women's sports because the male body is built different, has different hormones, is just naturally stronger than a woman's body. And I used the example of that swimmer who ranked somewhere in like the 500s, I believe, in the men's like swimming divisions or whatever. And then became a woman and ranked in like first place or something. And it's like, in a situation like that, for one, you have to wonder if they only did it to be able to advance like that. And I mean, when you get into professional sports, there's money involved. So like they win money, when they win. So it's like, it's fraud, I feel like, and then you had asked me, if I had a kid that was transgender and, they had dreams and passion about playing a sport, how would I feel if my kid wanted to play a sport and was transgender? And I said, I don't know, because of course I want to encourage my kid to do anything they want to do. But at the end of the day, there's many different factors to it that makes it unfair for everybody involved, really, because if you talk about it the opposite way, like we were talking earlier
Yeah.
about like a girl wanting to play football with boys, that could be dangerous for her. Or, well, I mean, if she's transgender, it would be dangerous for him,
Yeah.
who is a biological female. So, your thoughts?
So yeah, I gave it more thought. I mean, originally when we were talking about it, I hadn't really formed much of an opinion on that because I was focused on the bathroom issue and kind of just the sport thing just kind of came up. But as I gave it more thought, like I want everybody to feel included and equal and all of that. But I can see the point of, bodies are different, and men are stronger, and it's just not fair either way. It just sucks. Sometimes life is unfair and there's nothing we can do about it. Like, I was giving you the example of how somebody can be like the perfect would be parent. Like, if they were a parent, they would just be like the best. And they could be born and not be able to have children. And it's just like, it's so unfair. And it's just, life isn't always fair. So I don't know what the solution is, like, really, because there is no good solution. But I can see the other side of it. I was kind of just totally against it and say yes, they should be included. But yeah, biologically, yes, the bodies are different. Men are stronger, so that has to be taken into consideration. And for me, it has nothing to do with wanting to exclude somebody because they're transgender, because that's not how I feel. It's just the biological part that,
Yeah. And I
they're
feel like
different.
this is one of the biggest problems that we have when we're talking about any issue now here in 2023 in the era of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Everything is about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And like, we have been, I think millennials and younger have been duped like the generations of participation trophies, right? Like everybody's supposed to be awarded equally for putting in the effort or for being present. And I don't think that my life was any worse off because I didn't always get a trophy for everything that I participated in. Like, and it's what you're saying, like life is not always fair, and I don't think that this turn that we have taken, like politically, nationally, globally, like the way that we are handling situations when it comes to diversity and inclusion, I think it's really scary because, like, yes, we want to encourage our kids to be themselves, to love themselves, and to think that anything's possible and that they can go as far as life will take them as long as they put the work in.
Yeah.
But at what point do we want to make sure that we're not instilling this false, like, sense of, I don't even know the word, but it's like,
Mm.
I mean, if your kid thinks that they're a dog and wants to pee on a fire hydrant, like, that's not okay. Like, no, you can't do that. You know what I mean? It's like that. Like, I'm not comparing transgender people to dogs, so don't don't go there in the comments. But I'm saying it's not the same thing, but it's the same thing because you can be anything you want to be, but you can't be anything you want to be. As my kids are screaming in the background. Sorry, but I mean, like, does
Like,
that
I
make
think I think
sense?
a transgender person, like, they can be, if they want to be a woman, they can be a woman. If they want to be a man, they can be a man. But they can't change how they were born, like the biological part, and it is different. A female
Yeah.
body and a man's body is different, and I wish there was a way to make it fair, and it just, yeah, it's just one of those things that just sucks because somebody's going to be hurt, and I hate to think of anybody being hurt or left out. And if somebody wants to play sports, it's a really tough one. It really is.
Yeah. But I mean, like,
But I have to make a point that I definitely don't think it's a a birth defect or anything like that. I just think it's not studied enough. They don't know enough about it, and maybe something biologically that just born in the wrong body. I don't, like.
yeah. So this, we also got to this point in the last episode because we were talking about, are transgender people born that way? Are gay people born that way?
Yeah.
And so I feel like there is something to be said about the rise in transgender cases over a specific amount of time. Like, I don't know what it is. So I would like to look up these statistics of, how many people were reportedly transgender 10 years ago, 5 years ago, versus over the past 3 years that this has been like a big part of the mainstream narrative,
Mm-hmm.
and being implemented into school curriculums, because I had somebody went to a meeting a couple weeks ago where people were talking about the books in the school libraries, and the books that are like very sexually explicit. And somebody told a story about their friend's kid, like a 9-year-old girl, that told her mother that she was a lesbian. And the mother was like, and it's like a tomboyish 9-year-old. And the mother's like, I don't think so. And the girl's like, yeah, I am, like so and so, which so and so is like an adult at school. I don't know if it's a teacher, but it's an adult at school. So and so told me that I am. And the mother's like, well, do you want to like have sex or like kiss or, whatever she said to her
Mm-hmm.
9-year-old, who knows what she understands. But do you want to do these things with females? And the girl said, ew, no. And the mother's like, okay, so you're not a lesbian. Like, just because you're like, like you dress the way you dress or look the way or act the way doesn't make you anything.
Yeah.
Like that's for you to decide, like later in life when you are having relationships with people. And I think that that's really dangerous. And that's why we're having more cases, because I said this to somebody not too long ago, that like when you're a young child, you are initially drawn to other kids of the same sex because you have more in common with them. They may look more like you. You have the same mannerisms. The girls are with the girls, the boys are with the boys. So if you're telling elementary school age kids, if you're a girl and you like girls better than you like boys, then that means you're gay, and vice versa, the boys. What are you doing to that undeveloped mind? It's not like I have nothing against gay people at all. But first of all, I don't care who you have sex with. Like, I don't feel like I need to know about any other adult's sexuality unless I'm having sex with them. So I don't care about it with adults, and I don't think anybody should. But when you're instilling into a young child's mind, like the thought that because you act this way, because you dress this way, then that means that you are this way, that's going to have a very detrimental and lasting effect on their development, And again, I'm not saying that doesn't mean that I'm saying that it's bad to be gay. I'm saying that you're telling them what they are before they ever even know what it means. You know? Yeah, I don't want, and that's part of the reason I pulled my kids out of school. Not because I don't want my kids to be gay. I will love my kids no matter what they are. But nobody needs to talk to them about that shit this young. It doesn't need to happen. So, which brings us back to the last episode where I said that I don't think anybody's born gay. And I got the look.
I disagree, but okay, go ahead.
So you think that they have no choice?
I
A
think
gay person has no choice. No person has a choice who they're attracted to.
no, I think it's just with you. You're born and you're just that way. And
So I suggested last time that, again, I don't know the statistics, so I should probably look them up. But from stories I've heard, from things that I've read, it seems that a lot of openly gay people have a history of some kind of abuse earlier in their life or in their childhood. So that's one thing. So I think that it has a lot to do with being a product of your environment. And this might be a plot twist, but I think it could have something to do with vaccines.
oh my God.
So first of all, I think I've told you before, I'm bisexual. And I don't think that I was born that way. Because it doesn't make sense born that way, because when you're a child, you don't have feelings like that because you don't know about these things. So when I was maybe like 12 years old, I had like a babysitter, or like, my father's friend that would watch me while my parents were working. And she was probably maybe about 10 or so years older than me. And she was lesbian. So her and her girlfriend would babysit me or watch me every day. I mean, like, I was 12. So do you call it babysitting? I don't know. But, they would take me out every day, or like, come sit at my house with me while my parents were working. And I looked up to them. They were like the cool kids, because they were younger than my parents, but older than me. So they weren't kids, but they seemed like just like the older kids to me. And I became friends with like that girl's younger sister. So the girl who used to watch me, became like an older sister figure to me. And I admired her and I looked up to her. And it was somebody that I spent a lot of time with. And so I feel like that had influence on me, and that played a part in me deciding later in life that at one point I wanted to be with a female. And I don't think that had I not had her to look up to, I would have had those feelings, So that's how I feel about it. And the vaccine part is because when you're injecting something into your body, hormones can be included in whatever it is that's being injected into your body, or other chemicals that cause hormones to like extract or die in your body. So, and there's, Shannon maybe can correct me, I think like 64 vaccines on like the childhood schedule, like from birth to 14, 18 or something. I don't know. I could be wrong. But it's a very high number of vaccines that children are supposed to get from birth to a certain age. So first of all, anything that a doctor deems that a child is born with. So Shannon says the number varies depending if you count flu shots. So when they say that somebody is like born with something, if your child is born and within its first week of life gets like 20 vaccines, how do you know that whatever illness they got after that didn't come from one of those vaccines? When your doctor tells you that they were born that way, you don't know. Most people don't know that vaccine manufacturers cannot be held liable for injury or death. And even the maximum payout, if you can prove that a vaccine killed somebody, is something like $250,000. So why, so I think that that's very heavy and something that every parent should know, and most parents don't know. If your doctor tells you that your child was born with something, and within the first 72 hours of your child's life, they had about 15 vaccines, how do you know that they didn't get whatever illness or disorder that they have from something that was injected into them? You don't know. And they're not going to try to help you figure it out because it's a money-making machine for them. Mm-hmm. So when they're injecting something into your baby, how do we know that there's no female hormones that they're injecting into male babies? How do we know that there's no male hormones that they're injecting into female babies? So that's how I think that vaccines tie into this. And I hope that what I'm saying right now doesn't get this channel banned from posting. But it's something to think about. And since I'm on the topic, I'm also just going to say one more thing that most people don't know about vaccines, parents especially, is that in all vaccines, not just the COVID one, not just flu shots, in all vaccines, they contain some form of like aborted human fetal cells, animal cells, all vaccines. So that is something that people should think about when vaccinating, and something that explains how getting a vaccine is a religious issue. Because if it is a religious belief that you do not agree with or condone abortion, and you get vaccines and you don't know that there's aborted fetal cells, human fetal cells in those vaccines, that's where you get your religious exemption from when you're exempting yourself from a vaccine. And most people don't know that. And that's why I say that that I don't believe in choice when it comes to vaccine, because everybody's whole thing is like, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. The people who are against the COVID vaccine, their thing usually is, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. The other vaccines are fine. I just don't agree with the COVID vaccine because blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I don't believe in letting people choose for vaccines. I think all vaccines should be banned because people are not aware of what's in them before injecting them into themselves and their babies. And if you're not completely informed of what you're injecting into yourself or your child, then I don't think that you're capable of making the decision of whether or not to do it. So, I didn't mean to go off on a trail about vaccines, but I did mean to go off on a trail about vaccines. But yeah, so I think that it could potentially also be something included in a vaccine that makes somebody have different hormones and makes them maybe, because I feel like with somebody who has like kind of flamboyant tendencies and mannerisms, like I feel like a lot of times we feel like that happens like from birth, I feel like maybe it could be from a vaccine, but who knows?
Well, I can't fault you for not trusting vaccines because the government has been corrupt and tested things on us many times. I do disagree, but I can. I understand your thought process.
Yeah. So hold on. I was like rambling and there were comments coming in. So let me see if I missed anything. Kimberly says, I never thought about hormones and vaccines. I actually literally didn't until like last week either. I knew all of this other stuff since 2020, but when I was having this conversation with somebody else about like being born gay, before this episode ever even happened, I was like, wait a minute, light bulb, like could it come from a vaccine? It's like everything that's ever been wrong, could it have been a vaccine? Yeah. Thank you, Shannon. Oh God. Good job, Kimberly. That's one of the worst ones, even though I think they're all equally as bad. I've heard horrible things about the Hep B vaccine. Yeah. So that's what I think. So maybe we can close out the gay conversation now.
Yeah,
I don't
those
know.
are very interesting.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So
I never believed the vaccine killed. I thought you guys, when I'm talking about, I don't know if I should say anti-vaxxers, but people who were against the vaccine, I thought they were all nuts, and then they were spreading COVID.
yes,
and
always say anti-vaxxers.
anti-vaxxers.
I'm a
Yeah,
proud anti-vaxxer.
like they're all nuts. They're all spreading the virus, and then somebody I love died, and there's nothing else to point to but the vaccine. A 25-year-old healthy kid died out of nowhere. He wasn't sick. He was fine in the morning, and then he was gone. And the autopsy had nothing to show except a slightly enlarged heart. So I'm not so close-minded anymore. I'm trying to keep my mind open because the world's crazy. And the government's corrupt. We have no idea what they're doing to us.
And actually, I heard another story the other day about because you know how they do vaccine clinics in schools, and they do bribery, where they offer gift cards and free shit for getting a vaccine. I heard about a teenager who had already gotten like whatever number booster everybody's on, and when there was a vaccine clinic at school, they were giving out like $75 gift cards. So the kid went and got another booster that they already had so that they could get a $75 gift card.
I could see that happening.
And who knows if their parents know. There was also another story about like a girls, like young girls dance team, like minor girls. I don't know, maybe like 12-year-olds or something. Dance team from like Fall River or something that came to perform maybe in Boston. They were competing in a dance competition or something. I know Shannon will correct me in the comments. And because this was during Boston's vaccine verification program, where you had to have a vaccine to go into restaurants and venues in Boston last year. So some of these girls, minor children who were not with their parents in the moment, like they were with their dance instructors or chaperones or whoever was there, weren't able to go into the venue without their vaccine card. And so they went across the street to CVS or Walgreens or whatever and got the vaccine so that they could go compete in the dance competition without their parents' consent. And there's so many instances where children have been accidentally vaccinated in schools without their parents knowing. It's crazy. And it's like, whenever something's free, you have to ask questions. Whenever something's being like pushed on you and they're bribing you to do it. Oh, and especially when it's like targeted at minorities, like, Black and brown people have a higher risk of severe effects of COVID, so they have to get the vaccine. Question it. If you know how racist the government is, why are you not questioning it when they say Black and brown people need it more than anybody else? Like, or when they literally target you even more by going to your neighborhood, to your health center, to when they have block parties outside with vaccine clinics in inner city neighborhoods. Come get an ice cream for a vaccine. Sorry. Good night, Kimberly. Thank you for watching. And you can find the other 2 episodes here where you found this one on my Facebook page, or you can go to our YouTube channel, which is People's Press Media. Sounds like the school system broke down to let them have more than one jab for $75. Nobody cares to check on these things.
Yeah.
All that matters is their numbers. It's about the money.
Crazy.
But I keep coughing, so I'm gonna have to light another cigarette. So it's been an hour and 10 minutes today.
It was a double show. Oh,
But yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that this was a good conversation today.
yeah, I'm sure we'll be back on it again.
We unintentionally got to cover vaccines, so that's exciting. Now we'll be banned. We're gonna have to make a new channel next week.
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that was a question, Leslie. So she said, sounds like the school systems broke down to let them have more than one jab for $75. And then she said, that's not my question. The school system's process broke down. Are you asking if their system broke down? She said that she's a conservative, but I'm blue pilling her. Why? I mean, I do prefer for people to be in the middle, so this could be a good thing. But I don't understand the question. I'm sorry. Are you asking? That's a yes. If their process broke down? Oh. I mean, I don't think that there is a process. I think that these things happen all the time.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
we
know if
are
they have like a
learning.
database or what. I don't know how they verify the information.
Who knows? She said you're both learning. Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah. I love learning. And I don't ever claim to know a lot. I'm just here for conversation and to try to help people understand what I think. And to try to help people understand that us average people have a lot more in common with each other than we do with anybody in the government, and that the government is not here to help us. There is much to learn prior to making statements of certitude. So I don't know what the word certitude means. Somebody could tell me.
I can't help you with that either.
But yeah, thank you. Yeah, I don't try to act like a know-it-all, and I certainly hope that I don't come off that way, because I do not think that I know it all, or even a lot. I just try to get people to have an open mind, like I try to have, and see all points of view instead of just like blindly following one thing. Because for the first part of my life, I was raised not even by my parents, because my parents were never political, but just by society. I feel like in Boston, you're just raised to be a Democrat, vote for Democrats, follow the Democratic way. And I voted for Obama twice. Because he was black. And I just wanted to witness history and see the first black president. I didn't pay attention to any politics. Well, that's why I voted for him for the first time. And then the second time I voted for him because I fell in love with him, like the rest of the country. We loved that family. So, and then when 2016 and 2020 happened, when 2016 happened, I voted for Trump just because that's what made sense to me. I've always been registered as like unenrolled independent. So I voted for Trump in 2016 just because that's what made sense to me. And then in 2020, when all the shit went down, and I started like participating in rallies and protests and all of the political things, I thought that Republican was the way to be, that everybody needed to be Republican, that the Republicans were right about almost everything. And I called myself a conservative and all of that. And then toward the end of, well, no, like the middle of 2021 was when I started to realize like the Republicans are bullshit too. It's all bullshit.
Right?
But yeah, so I don't know. I think that we went way over the time.
Yeah.
And I don't know what our next topic will be, but I'll start posting about it once we know. Our next show will be on
Monday.
9:00. The past 2 times we streamed live on Facebook and on YouTube. And now tonight we were on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. But I don't think I had any engagement from Twitter. So I'm going to have to go look and see how that worked out. Leslie's given me like all these pointers on like how to have a successful show. And then I'm like, okay, we're going to go now. She's like, now you want to stop. Because I don't, honestly, like I could talk for hours, but I don't know how much time Heidi has. So I'm not trying to just like keep going, not knowing if she wants to go to bed or something.
Oh, I do not know what my 2 little ones are up to upstairs. I told
Yeah,
them to
my
be good
kids
for
are still up
half an
too.
hour. I said, watch the movie and be good for them.
So yeah, but I can't, well, not obviously. From what I can see on the screen in front of me, I can see where the comments are coming from, but I can't see, like, I can see that there's 7 people watching right now, but I can't see where they're watching. So I am pretty sure so far this is the 3rd show. So I'm not like, like I'm paying attention to the viewership, obviously, but I can see that the engagement's coming mostly from Facebook. And like I said, tonight was the first night we went on Twitter. So yeah, see, Shannon. Shannon's always the one to say that I go way too long every time. It was a good show, ladies. Wrap it up.
Aww.
Oh God. Okay. Well, thank you, Heidi.
Thank you
for show number
Catherine.
3.
Thank you, everybody.
And we will see you guys on Monday.
All right. Have a good
Thank
night,
you. And
everybody.
thank you, Leslie, for all your input. And
Oh,
Shannon.
yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Good
Bye.
night. Bye.